going to click up here for full screen.
Hi, everyone.
Woman Dora, how are you?
Hello.
Hello, Justin.
Hello.
We are live on YouTube and also on Facebook in just a minute, Lisa. So we should be ready to go whenever you decide to get started.
Let's see, I need to change my name here.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Greg.
Hi there. Mary, thank you for your help.
Get the phone.
There it is. Okay. Hello, everyone.
Good evening.
Hi, Lisa.
Do you think we'll have everyone tonight, Lisa?
Yeah, I believe so. The only one I didn't hear from anyone that might be having any troubles.
Okay.
So, and the only one I did hear from that wasn't coming is John Martin. So.
Okay. Saw his email, yeah. Is this the first one we've done digitally?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we've been lucky enough to be able to meet outdoors for most of our meetings. We didn't have the, let's see, the March, April, or May meetings. We didn't hold one at all
Oh, okay.
when everything
Yeah,
was
meeting's
like
just starting.
shut
I
down.
was worried because the plumber just finally left 2 minutes ago. So
And we were very
I'll talk to
fortunate
you
to
later,
meet
but
at
I'm
the
gonna call
museum
this
last month.
thanks.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the only actual member we're missing so far is Bonnie. Mary, you didn't hear anything from Bonnie that she was having any trouble or that she
I
didn't
have not,
know
no.
how to do it or anything? Okay. I didn't either.
Is Karen Lowe on? I don't.
Yep, she is.
Oh, there she is. Okay. Hey, Lori.
Hi.
Well, should we go ahead and call this meeting to order?
Yeah, you're all set live on YouTube. So you're ready to go anytime you like, Lisa.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I want to make sure the public knows that the Historic Conservation District Commission is meeting electronically due to the continued ongoing pandemic. So we're going to do roll call. As I do roll call, make sure each one says their name and what city they are located in right now. So Lisa Dora, Chair, Grand Haven. Karen Casey,
Here, Grand Haven.
Justin Forrest,
Here in Grand Haven.
Bonnie Cowles, Karen Lowe,
Here, Grand Haven, Michigan.
Lori Vanderlande,
Here, Grand Haven, Michigan.
and we do still have one vacancy. So other members who are present is Mary Angel, Administrative Liaison for the City of Grand Haven. John Martin could not be present, who is the liaison from the Loudoun Library and the director. Erin Polarsky, She is here but not visible. She is the liaison from the Tri-Cities Museum. And City Manager Pat McGinnis.
And there's a Greg H on. You don't know Greg H.
Hi, I'm Greg Holcomb. I've been working with the BLP on the presentation we'll make at the top of the agenda.
Oh, cool.
I'm calling in from Ann Arbor, but I spent most of my life in Holland and worked with Pat and Grand Haven for almost 20 years on a variety of projects.
Well, I'll forgive you for being a Wolverine or in Ann Arbor anyway.
Thank you.
So item number 1 is a general business call to the viewing audience. At this time, members of the viewing audience may address the Historical Conservation District Commission on any item, whether it's on the agenda or not. Those addressing the commission are asked to provide their names and addresses and will be limited to 3 minutes of speaking time. The commission will hear all comments for future consideration, but will not have a response at this time. If you would like to comment during the general business call to the audience section of tonight's agenda, you may enter your comments via Facebook live stream at any time during the meeting or call 616-402-0815 when prompted. This number will repeat throughout tonight's meeting. Pat, do you have any on Facebook?
I don't see any, and I will put that up for a minute so people can see that if they did want to call.
Okay.
And let me check, because we're on YouTube as well. So
Okay.
you can post comments on YouTube, or I believe we should be on Facebook Live as well.
Pat, I'm not seeing our meeting on Facebook Live. I'm checking right now and I don't see it.
Okay.
Oh, wait a minute. Here we are. It's on.
It's on Facebook Live.
Yes, it is.
That is the magic of the internet. We've got this meeting's going on right now on Facebook Live, but we're streaming from YouTube. And then starting at 5:30, we've got another meeting that's coming on Facebook Live. So we'll have 2 meetings running at the same time on Facebook Live. So enjoy, universe. This meeting's going on right now on Facebook Live. Oh, I hear me. There we go.
Sorry.
So I'm not getting any phone calls right now, Lisa, and I don't see any comments. Do you see any comments on Facebook Live, Mary?
I do not.
All right.
All right then. Item number 2, approval of the electronic meeting procedures policy adopted pursuant to PA 228 of 2020. Now you received that information emailed to you with your agenda, and we just need to vote to approve that procedure policy. So I will go through roll call and just say aye, and you don't have to state your location again, do you, Mary?
No, you do not. It's just a normal vote.
All right. So Karen Casey,
Aye.
Justin Forrest,
Aye.
Bonnie Cowles, Karen Lowe,
Aye.
Lori Vanderlendy,
Aye.
and Lisa Dora, aye. Item number 3, Grand Haven BLP Diesel Plant RGP Proposals Presentation by City Manager Pat McGinnis.
Well, thank you very much, Historic Commission. We've got Greg Holcomb with us tonight. I call him Urban Innovations. Is that still the name of your company?
Yes. Yep.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, like he had mentioned earlier, he was a consultant for the city on a great variety of projects. I can't list them. I come across his name frequently when we're looking at different things we've worked on. And I say, oh yeah, that successful project, Greg was helping us with that. He's just a soft-spoken, intentional, deliberate planner, expert from Highland and other places, Ann Arbor, sorry. And he was hired by the BLP totally independent of of our office, to assist with developing an RFP and coming up, helping to qualify the proposals as they came in. And now he's been to the Planning Commission, he's been to the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, and now he's here to present to you guys the proposals that were received by the BLP for the diesel plant. So if you're ready, I'll just turn it over to Mr. Holcomb. So I'm gonna share the screen. Oh, now it disappeared on me. Hold on a sec. There it is. So can you guys see that?
Yes.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Pat. I appreciate being with all of you, and wish obviously it could be in person, because this is a kind of an intriguing project that I was invited to help the BLP with. I've seen this building over many years of working in Grand Haven, and have always admired it and so forth. We started this process in June, prepared the proposals, put the request for proposals out on the street July 20, and received 4 compliant proposals on September 30. And we made a presentation of basically what you're going to see on October 15 to the board of the BLP. Pat has seen this several times and could do this show maybe better than me at this point, but we'll just go through this quickly. If you do have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them in real time, or we can wait till the end. However you wish to do it, I'm comfortable doing that. We can go to the second slide. And can people hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, Pat, if you want to go to the second slide, it'd be fine.
Is this, I don't know if this is, I'm working off another document maybe.
Yeah, what I'm seeing is the package I think that Mary sent to folks. At least what I'm seeing on the screen, I'm seeing the first slide, but if we want to just, if you can go to the second slide.
Is that the second slide?
The second slide is what I'm seeing is just the first slide, the title slide.
Oh, my screen sharing paused. I'm sorry. I don't know why that happened.
No problem. No, we'll just, we almost don't need the presentation, but it is nice to see the visuals from the different companies. But what I was, based on the slides, we sent the proposal, the request for proposal to over 70 companies, and others joined along the way. Obviously developers, construction firms, real estate companies, brokers, architectural and engineering firms. And all of these people, individuals and companies were encouraged to try to tour the plant. Many did. Review documents. There were several environmental review documents that were available to them. And meanwhile, you probably know, but have heard that the building itself is encroaching on Harbor Drive, as well as Sherman, and Jennifer Howland and Pat and others within the BLP and the surveyors involved have worked hard to figure out a good way to resolve those encroachment issues. And I think they've come up with a good model. So the property can in fact be transferred. The next few slides just are showing, illustrate the site. And many of you maybe haven't been in the building. It's quite spectacular. Many of the machines are still, the turbines and the generators are still in. Again, along Harbor Drive, across from the Coast Guard station, nice view upriver, and then down the Sherman and Y and Mulligan's Hollow and all coming in and surrounding it. It makes for a very, very unique property. And what we tried to emphasize in the RFP that Grand Haven is this, really, it's quite a jewel in the world of West Michigan and Michigan and the Midwest. Grand Haven is known for the Grand River, the Coast Guard Festival, all kinds of great things that the city has. This is a very, very unique property and parcel that we think has great redevelopment potential. That's what we tried to frame in the RFP. And in my, literally dozens and dozens of calls with development interests, they really were excited about the potential to be in Grand Haven and do a cool project here. Go ahead, Pat, please. So the projects, if you've had a chance to look at this material, the projects, the 4 proposals really broke into 2 big categories. The save and reuse on the left and the demolish and build new on the right. And we'll just go through these rather quickly with 3 slides for each proposal. The CL Lakewood, Illinois-based company with a Holland-based company. It's a joint venture. They are probably the purest example of a historic restoration. They're planning to save the building and to demise it into 2 main pieces, a restaurant that you can see on the right with 100+ seats, and a activity or event space on the left with seating of, I think it's up to 200. You can see the space. And then the third piece of their program is offices. You can see it on the mezzanine. Here's the site plan and how it breaks out. They plan to save 2 of the engines, the machines and reactors inside, to feature them in the restaurant and the event space. And then the office space is in the darker color. The site plan adds some parking. It picks up some parking on the upper level off Sherman. And then there's an outdoor patio on the restaurant and a deck off the event space. So, they're using the property as it is, basically save the envelope. And I think all of the proposers would try to do brownfield TIF funding, but CL Lakewood specifically mentioned trying to go for historic tax credits. And to do that, you have to be more careful with the building. You can't divide it as much. You have to be very careful with those rules and would need to work with the city on the designation in those rules. Summary of what Lakewood CL would do is, and it's a reuse. They estimate a $5.4 million investment. The site bid, the purchase price of the site would be up to $400,000. Again, depending on those other incentive programs and availability of support. CL has done most of their work in Illinois, but they are working in 3 or Marshall, I think Manistee, and at least 1 other Michigan city right now. We took a first cut at the fit from a planning, master plan, and vision perspective, and we felt that this project seems to fit well with those elements. Again, that's not our work, that's Jennifer and Pat's work, but we felt it fit pretty well. The second proposal is by Melching. Melching is a Muskegon-based company, a major demolition and contracting company. But they have very strong local partners with Mark Oppenheisen and Fishbeck as their environmental consultants. They are also saving the building, and then they would produce condominiums inside the diesel plant building and also add the 5 townhomes up on Sherman. You can see that in the site plan and in the drawing. And in part of the building, they also would add 13 condos inside the space, as well as an entry near the western portion of the property, and then use 2/3 of the lower level for, they call it an entertainment venue, and probably a restaurant. That's their direction, not a commitment, but that's their direction. You can see they would then have an outdoor plaza as well off that lower level. And then the 13 condominiums in different configurations in the space itself, fully utilizing the building. The summary, 13 condos outside, 5 townhomes, an $8 to $9 million investment, and a site bid again of up to $400,000 to purchase it. I mentioned Melching, local redeveloper, a very strong team. And again, it seems to fit. The project seems to fit. The building obviously reused, and then adding the units up off Sherman. seems to sort of fit the neighborhood and fit the site and the building. The third proposers are Capstone, local developers that have done several projects, the Dairy Queen project and Franklin Row recently. They are proposing 8 duplex townhomes. So the building you're seeing is a duplex, a vertical duplex, so side by side with 2 stories and lower level in most cases. The elevations are the upper elevation on the back elevation and the side elevations, a brick faced Palladian windows, very reminiscent of the diesel plant. They picked up on the architectural style and design, and actually they plan to save some of the materials, the brick and limestone detailing for these buildings. So they will actually pick up the design and the materials. The next image shows the site plan, 6 of these duplexes, so a total of 12 units along Harbor, and then 2 duplexes up on Sherman, so a total of 8, 16 total residential units. There's also a small pool and a community building off the parking lot that you can kind of see tucked in there. A new project, but it has pieces of the old building itself. The summary, again, the 8 duplexes, a $10+ million investment. The site bid is significantly higher, $1.525 million. This is a significant difference from the first 2 and important resources coming into the community. Capstone, as I mentioned, local developer, Mr. Tenkate and Groothuis, and a good team around them working on the project. Going to reuse the materials. They also plan to make a $35,000 donation to the Tri-Cities Museum to feature, which would feature the diesel plant and the BLP. Again, we felt, again, at a high kind of strategic level that this program seems to fit well with the city vision and the master plan. Scale, materials, fit, seem to fit pretty well. The fourth proposal is from Elite Hospitality out of Oakland County on the east side of the state, but they do have a local presence. This is for a new, brand new 85,000 square foot, 6-story hotel. It would be a flagged hotel with a national chain. They're very familiar with national hotel chains, and they would bring in such a flag. You can see the site plan. It's roughly the same footprint as the diesel plant, 15-ish thousand square feet. And but it's centered on the space with 90 parking spaces around. The 6-story building would have 90 rooms. So 1 parking space per room is what they've at least described so far. A few more views of the plan. The Elite Hospitality purchased the Holiday Inn, Spring Lake Grand Haven Holiday Inn 2 years ago and invested in the proposal about $4 million to rehabilitate it. So they became familiar with Grand Haven, were excited by this potential project opportunity and have pursued it over the last couple months. The summary on this is important. Again, demolish the plant, new hotel. There would be 90 rooms and also kind of ground floor shops that you'd see in a typical hotel, little gift shops and some food. But this is a significant investment, $12 to $15 million. Again, it's 85,000 square feet. This is a very significant building. The site bid would be, again, depending on incentives and brownfield and other things, a bid of up to $1 million. Again, Elite, a Michigan developer, Grand Haven. They have 22 hotels in their portfolio, and they have several other projects that are brewing around the state. Again, without getting into other people's responsibilities, we weren't quite as sure about this, the fit. And it really has to do with the vision, the height of the building and the parking. Not our responsibility, but we know 6 stories is a much different situation than what we have now and in the surrounding properties. So Pat, the only thing, one more slide, and then one more slide. This is just a summary, and one more, sorry. This is sort of hard to read, but you might want to look at it separately, but this is a summary of all the key information about each of the 4 proposals. So the investment, the uses, the square footages, the parking, kind of one sheet that gives you something to mark up as you think about it, as the leadership of the board and leadership of the city has looked at the programs and projects. And as you go down in the list, you're into other folks' responsibility, planning commission, brownfield, your historic conservation responsibilities. We took a crack at some of those just to get that something on paper, but basically we're excited about 4 of the proposals, strong teams, look like they can all deliver on these projects, and excited to see the program move forward. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have from what we've learned so far about the teams and their proposals.
Greg, I guess you or Pat, one question I have, when looking at the CL Lakewood and the mulching, they have different purposes. Is there one that you felt was a better fit in terms of the city's needs, the residential versus the commercial? Pat, I'm kind of asking about, I think the CL Lakewood had a little bit more of a focus on event space and restaurant versus the mulching was clearly some condominiums, residential, as well as entertainment.
Yeah, from the staff or the city's perspective, we've not yet developed any kind of a recommendation. We think we're getting some excellent feedback from the Planning Commission and from the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, the Economic Development Corporation, Greg himself, the BLP, you guys, all of these different perspectives. We're going to take all that information in, we'll compile it, send it forward to City Council, answer any follow-up questions. And, we really kind of rely on the master plan and the idea that, these are permitted uses. Of course, we've also got considerable intel from the neighbors, the Sandpiper condominiums. They've got some real strong feelings about some of the proposals. So we're really taking all that together. I think, the economic development perspective kind of looked at some of the things that might create jobs, and the residential doesn't do that. And then others, as far as neighborhood fit, those that live right next to it would rather see residential infill and maybe not the commercial stuff. And then some that we've heard, and this is why City Council has to have very broad shoulders, because they'll get the feedback from some that, private uses are maybe not what many folks would want to see. They'd rather see something that's accessible to the public, whether it's keeping the old building and having it be some event space or restaurant, something that the public's welcome into, versus private residential, well, it's just for the private folks. So there are so many variables. It's very difficult for staff to say we think one or the other is best for the city. We just have to present everybody's different perspective. And so far, everyone's really valid, some really good points they bring forward. And I suspect you guys are going to bring forward some valid perspectives as well. And then we just take them all. And I love the matrix approach that Greg took here. This could be something that council could end up using and say, well, what percent impact, how important is the purchase price? Flat out dollars. What about the investment and the likely future tax base? How does that, make us feel? And I, so far, I try not to read City Council too much, but historically, at least, they've seemed a little more in tune with what the impact is on the value of the community, the quality of the community, versus just dollars and cents. I'll probably lean a little more towards that economic argument that, which one is going to prop up our local budgets and help us continue to provide all the services we provide. But they kind of expect that from staff, and they'll weigh that as one of all of these factors. But I believe they're going to be really very supportive as much as they can be, but if they support an historic perspective and what you guys might recommend, that might not be quite in line with what the Economic Development Corporation thinks is the best way to go. So they're going to have to weigh these things and make a decision. So to answer your question, short version is staff has not yet made any kind of value judgment on any of these proposals.
Can I just add a little bit more to what Pat just said? Because I think that's is a nice summary of what we've heard. The only other angle that I think has come into both of the previous meetings is what impact would the proposed uses have on existing businesses and activities? And so whether it's restaurants or event spaces, the community center, how would these new uses, from one perspective, we want everything to be successful. Anything that ultimately is approved, we want to be successful. We want people to come in and build it and operate it and have it be successful and profitable and reasonable and so forth. What angle do these different proposals have on existing operations, public and private, with the community center and so forth? That's another line of discussion I've heard as well, Pat.
Absolutely.
Hi, Karen Casey. I did have a question, and this isn't really so much about historic. And I know that's what we're doing today. And of course, and for me, from a historic perspective, we would want to preserve the building. But I'm just curious as to whether or not the Coast Guard has been brought into any of these discussions because of the proximity of the building to the two Coast Guard facilities that are there. My worry is that a 6-story motel could pose not only congestion in that area, unless we're going to put in a traffic light, but security issues related to the Coast Guard. Because it's 90 rooms of transient people, some of whom would be on floors higher than the existing Coast Guard structures. So I just didn't know if they've been invited to or asked to give input.
I know they received a proposal, the request for a proposal. There was some discussion about, is there any way that the Coast Guard would be interested in the building, rehabbing it, turning it into housing for their people, their cadets, their own people who come and go and so forth. But as far as I know, we did not hear anything from the Coast Guard. I'm not sure if the city had any conversations, but we did not.
I'm furiously taking notes, and I appreciate that, Karen. We'll make sure both Coast Guard and the Army Corps and the YMCA, those are important stakeholders right in the neighborhood that we got to make sure they're, their opinions are being solicited, because they have a stake in this project as well.
Well, and as you know, that those intersections right there are so congested anyway. Anything that's going to significantly add to that, something to think about too.
Okay.
I guess, just from a comments perspective, I think most of the people on this call know this, but this is a building from the 1930s, and it is kind of significant from a historical perspective. So as one, not just the architecture, but I think as one of the early publicly owned power company buildings in the state of Michigan. So that's one, I think, reason why I can't speak for everyone on the commission, but I'd certainly like the proposals that are save and reuse, obviously, versus demolishing this building.
I agree with Karen there, Justin Forrest, by the way. I think it's such a cool, unique property that we have in our history, as Karen was kind of saying, and it's such a heavily trafficked, area, foot traffic, vehicle traffic, And I think it would be a real benefit if others, you know, visiting the city, residents, they got to experience, you know, the inside of that building. And if it's repurposed and resaved, I think that would be a pretty cool structure to add to our downtown. It's also kind of in the middle of that like no man's land between downtown and towards the beach. And I think that could really benefit that area as well sometimes too, as you know, with a little more traffic. So I think it'd be cool to see those get to enjoy, you know, the historical significance of the building as well. Whereas, you know, opposed to private, you know, houses where it kind of loses some of that historic appeal to the city. So.
I agree. I agree with both of them. That's definitely the way I'm leaning towards save and reuse. For
On
those-
engine number 4 was a works progress administration addition to the building. So that's another historic feature.
Mhm.
Hi, Erin Polarsky here from the Tri-Cities Historical Museum. You know, I love the whole save and reuse plan. But if things are to change to the outside or it is to be torn down, we would love to document before, just to get images of the inside and outside, just so we can have for our records. So keep us in mind.
Aaron, I'm just curious, does the museum currently have any, you know, old property or the pieces from any of the plan, or is it all?
That's something I'm gonna have to look into a little bit further, for sure.
I think that is a cool offer on that one, you know, obviously getting a donation for the museum and you know, preserving some of the history if it is tore down. But I'm just curious to see if you guys had any in your collection already or not.
I can add just a little more besides Capstone trying to save materials and reuse it and make a donation to Tri-Cities. I had several conversations by different groups that were interested, that had toured it, that the idea of potentially saving a machine, if the building does go away, is there a chance to save one of the machines to put it outside nearby or in Mulligan's or somewhere else in the community? That has happened. In fact, Highland had a smaller engine that they saved from one of their buildings historically, and they featured basically as a sculpture. They cleaned it up, they painted it, they tell the story about that. So at a minimum, what Aaron mentioned, what they're talking about with a display for the Capstone contribution, and you know, it is a very interesting history that should be told in some meaningful way.
Greg, that's a great idea. And as you mentioned, that could also be used with the mulching proposal, which is still a reuse, but
Yep.
since they're modifying the interior so much, we could still maybe take advantage of that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's, I should have mentioned, I'm sorry, they are saving engine number 7, the one that's in the far west of the building, the one that actually was still working, 7 megawatt unit that was operating until a year ago. That is still a functional, they wouldn't use it, but that's the one that they hope to save. And they would feature it as the entrance into their event space and restaurant. So yeah, that would be safe. As you can surmise, it's much easier to take the building down. You just think about taking 5 or 6 of the engines and the turbines out of the building and save the building carefully and all the rest. And what you're going to discover if you've been in the basement, these enormous foundations that hold everything up, is a very delicate, tricky thing that they need to do for both of the save proposals. This is not easy. So I really admire the creativity that these guys have put into these projects. Very, very thoughtful, but it's not easy.
No. I do think there's just, you know, obviously I'm on the historic commission, so I believe this, but this is one of those few buildings, commercial buildings or public utility buildings in our community that really adds to the charm. It is a as Justin said, it's just a beautiful, you walk past it and you always think, oh, it's, the facade, it's a beautiful building, what it could be. So it's lovely to see all these proposals about how to do it. Naturally, the preference is if we could just still see that building from the exterior, I think it would continue, it wouldn't take away from the charm of our community and the walk along the riverfront. Can I ask a question? Is there, we've had some time, but I think all of us probably have to digest some of this that you've presented and review some more in detail. Is there an action that we need to get back to you on, other than the comments that we've been giving, Pat? Or
Not really. I mean, this is what we were looking for, is just some discussion. I'm getting some good ideas about, some of the, I know you haven't had time to go and do the real serious research that some of you like to do, but I have, noted some of the significant details that you presented tonight, that it was 1930s. I guess it was the early 1930s. I think we got it going. Well, before this building, there was another building there, I believe. Bob Benetza was telling me about that. But one of the earlier power company buildings, there's Bob now. I don't know, it was previously some kind of another electric facility.
Where the parking lot was the original steam plant. That was built around 1898, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And then the diesel plant was added on around 1930. And then that was gradually enlarged over time, and then the steam plant came down. So yeah, I mean, the original steam plant was between Harbor Drive and the river near get sneezing, sorry. The original steam plant was down by the river near a foot of Lafayette, I believe. Shows up on the old Sanborn maps. So anyway, yeah, it's been occupied for utility purposes for a long, long time.
Yeah, doing some of the deed work, we found that the city originally bought this from the estate of the descendants of William Ferry. So it really kind of goes back to our very origins as a trading post even. And then, it's in the very earliest of documents that they have out at the Register of Deeds office. I heard loud and clear, it sounds like the commission would likely prefer that the building be preserved.
Yes.
On some level. And so, that gives you two proposals versus the other two proposals. And I don't know if you wanted to just make some comments out of the two proposals that are preserving the building. Is one or another more in keeping with your idea of what honest interpretation and future use of that structure would be? And I know Greg had earlier opined in one of the meetings that the plan that, I forget what he called it, when you disembowel the building, what did you call it?
Well, when you demise it, when you
Demise
cut
it.
it up.
You don't disembowel it, you demise it.
Okay.
So when the building is demised, that makes it not eligible for historic tax credits.
Basically, yeah.
So the proposal that does not do that would more likely be more in line for federal tax credits. The project that does break it up and turn it into individual condos might be less. But I don't know if that's your feeling. If you guys feel like one of those two is a more attractive project. And then when it comes to the other two, the hotel and the condominiums, is there one or the other of those that is more in line with what you'd prefer to see? Might be some valuable feedback to get.
Well, if it's going to be torn down, I would definitely vote. Karen Casey would definitely vote for the capstone condos that resemble the building. My personal opinion is the hotel doesn't belong there. The design is not in keeping with the area, and it's just too big for the space. Too tall, too big.
I would agree with that also.
Me too.
We haven't had anybody yet say they love the hotel, so I'm going to start calling it the no-tel.
I can't think of how big of a home run too if that building was repurposed for, you know, folks to use, restaurant, you know, gosh, I'm just thinking, you know, people have wanted a beer garden in Grand Haven for quite some time now. Just with all the traffic you're going to get from the beach. And then I'm thinking in the winter too, it seems like things are going pretty good at the ski hill. It seems like they're always busy now. I think that would be a great place people can pop down, spend a little money, and then, you know, get back up on the slopes and have a good time too. So I think it would be probably a good building to have throughout the year down there, really.
That's a good point about the ski hill also.
Yeah, I guess, you know, the one thing I'll say I don't have a preference on the demolished from a historical perspective, just because I'm, you know, but I think personally I would be in line with some of the other members in saying that the hotel and the height kind of does not fit in with the character of the neighborhood. On the other two, you know, I think they're both actually equally creative in how they're going to reuse, even on the interior, either the space or not totally. So right now I don't have a strong preference. Maybe after I dig into it, I'd have more of a reaction, but I think both are great creative ways to preserve the exterior and rehabilitate that property. So those two, I think are both. I think it would depend on some of the other things you said, Pat, all the other input about, you know, you all weighing the need for different kinds of space, whether that's residential or commercial, and the neighborhood input. But from a historical perspective, I love both of the save and reuse options.
Maybe I can just jump in a little bit here. I think the exact process that council and the board will go through is not completely clear, but what we've described is something like first dibs. Who gets first dibs to formally get into a buy-sell agreement with contingencies that allow them to start into the normal planning process with the approval of the owner, the city/BLP, to enter into the normal, whether plan development, the brownfield discussion, the incentives over probably a 2 to 3 month period that all those take to run their course. And if the first dibs entity, A, B, C, or D, is selected and they move through that and they successfully make their way through, they would continue through and hopefully into next year, start the project. That would be, I think, the goal. You know, consummate the purchase and move ahead, transfer the property. If the first dibs, somehow it didn't work out for whatever reason, the numbers didn't work, the feasibility, technical and otherwise did not work out, then we'd want to get a little sense of the second and third dibs so that, you know, we can keep this thing rolling and not lose those other good proposals. So I think the city and the board will be very thoughtful about this, but we do want to keep in mind that there's probably a Pat, you know this best, 2 to 3 months due diligence that whoever is given the first dibs will have to go through no matter what. And then hopefully they'll make it through. But if not, there might be then a second chance for the other proposers. Again, that's imprecise, but that's the way we've been kind of viewing it over the last month or so.
Thank you.
Can I ask, are these 4 choices, is there a 5th choice? Were there any other proposals, or were these the only ones that came in, or are these just the 4 that the city liked best?
Now, these are the 4 complete compliant proposals. They met all the standards that were described in the RFP, and from vision to financial support to experience, qualified experience, and so forth. Like I said, we had serious discussions, I would say, with 8 to 10 different teams from West Michigan, Greater Michigan. And these 4 emerged with the complete proposals. Many people are actually remarkably busy right now. They just couldn't add another project. For one reason or another, it was too big or actually too small for them. The only other thing we did receive was a letter from a person interested in preserving the building as a historic museum, leaving it just like it is and have people be able to tour it and so forth. But that was a non-compliant proposal and had a very modest purchase price and had no team and so forth. So we really have set that aside just as a letter of interest more than a complete proposal. But the 4 you see are the 4 that we received from the process.
Now, Greg, you said that, I believe that you sent this RFP out to about 17 different parties.
Yeah, it went to 70 companies and individuals that are in more one way or another in real estate development, planning, and have been involved in projects and activities in, I'll just say generally West Michigan. A lot of folks from Grand Haven, Holland, Zeeland, Grand Rapids, a few north into Muskegon, not so much south, mostly in, within 50 miles of Grand Haven was our reach. And a few others came into the process within the first couple of weeks by word of mouth. So I suspect we actually reached maybe 80 different parties, but we know safely 70.
Do you believe that if there had been more time for people to develop an RFP, we would have gotten anything else?
It's possible. There were 1 or 2 parties that felt they didn't quite have enough time, that just because of their own way of doing things, whether they would have another week or 2 would have helped them. Really hard to say. We might have gotten 1 more. And what I know about the one that we might have gotten probably is represented in this mix. Restaurant, possibly housing, not sure which way they would go. They never said, but we might have gotten 1 more if we had had a couple more weeks. But I don't think we would have gotten 5 more if we had kept it going for another month. People that dropped out, not because of time, they dropped out because it just didn't kind of fit their overall approach.
Do you think COVID affected that, or is that kind of typical of a project that you only see actually 4 viable options?
It's a good question. I think COVID has just put a blanket over so many different things. For example, we thought the brew pub angle would have been pretty interesting, what Justin said somewhat, that either somebody locally or somebody within the state would have picked up on this because it really is set up in that way. And that may be what Melching or CL Lake would end up with, is sort of a brew pub style. But it was, and I made dozens of calls to brew folks around the state. And they were really excited about Grand Haven. They appreciated the historical building. They had seen things similar in other places, or they were actually already doing that. But it was hard to get them away from their COVID restrictions, their own lockdown situations, their own limitations and loss of business, to get them to be excited about call it a $5 to $10 million project, 50 to 100 miles away from their home base. So in that specific case, I think COVID may have hurt some possibilities. Hard to know.
Margins are very tight in the craft beer industry, so I can see why. I'm surprised maybe some more of the local ones don't really want to jump on it, but even then, still, that's a lot to ask at this time. I understand.
I've watched and worked in downtowns for more than 30 years, and restaurants are always restaurants in general are a very tricky business enterprise. They can be incredibly great and successful, but they can be very difficult, tenuous, even in the best of times. So I can imagine why the brew pub folks did not jump into this. So,
Greg, I'm just curious too, as in regard to the hotel, and I haven't heard it mentioned here tonight, and I know I was saying how the ski hill and that has been popular lately, it seems, but is there concerns too in the winter of filling a 6-story hotel downtown? Because I don't see the draw really of a full house. And I'm just curious too, has anybody asked our friends down at Blue Water Inn down the street there? I know they're a little smaller in scale there, but their thoughts on that as well.
you know, I can't comment too much on this. I'll just repeat what Joy Gash at the chamber mentioned. She said her sort of number one call from visitors that might come to the areas, do you have any lodging on water? You know, and I take that as the river or Lake Michigan.
Definitely.
And you've got the Holiday Inn now and on the river inland, but not on the big water.
Yep.
And this could satisfy that. Turn it into a destination and market it in a way that you can't market anything currently in place in Grand Haven. A national flag, we've seen it in Highland with the Marriott Courtyard. They have strong marketing power. They can literally pull people into your hotel and into your property because they have the national loyalty. Again, not today. Again, COVID is affecting all this, but those are powerful chains that can really bring people, new people into your community. So I suspect that would be their approach. And Elite is a strong company. They're very boutique, but very focused. Look like a very good company.
Interesting.
Greg, question, I assume this came up at some point. The BLP's RFP was that the building would be sold as is with all the equipment and everything, all the burden on the site. And the salvage rights would be part of the job and the cleaning up the building or the site or whatever was necessary. Do you think possibly if the salvage of equipment was separated and treated as a different job, would that have attracted a different set of interest? Or do you think that piece of it might have scared away some potential bidders?
I don't think so, Mr. Mayor. I because of the work we did in Holland, we dealt with demolition contractors, and I personally was involved in some business related to the demolition contractors, and Melching would be a very good example. Those guys are very talented, solid folks. I know that they were contacted by other potential proposers because that's what they do. They carefully either take down the whole building relatively easily, or they're designed and they're set up to remove equipment and move equipment with their own equipment or with like Ericsson's big cranes and big equipment out of Grand Rapids. So I don't think that was a problem. I think the BLP struggled a little bit back and forth with, should we clean it out or should we leave it as it is? And because, as we've seen, two of the proposals actually want to feature the machines, the engines or the generators in their proposals. I think at least at this moment, they probably made a good call on that. But I don't think it hindered people from taking a hard look at it because there are very experienced folks in West Michigan to handle those issues.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Are there any other comments or questions or anything for Greg or for Pat?
Just thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it was a good, thoughtful session to learn there. I like it.
We appreciate that you wanted our opinion very much.
You know, I guess I heard from one of you, Karen Casey on one and Justin on the other. You know, Justin seemed to tell me that, and I don't know if the board feels this way. I don't want to represented as the board's perspective if it's not. But it sounded like Justin was saying of the two that preserve the building, the Lakewood one would rank higher for him.
That
And
is
then I
correct
heard
for me. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard some follow-up comments that seemed to support that idea, and it might be, I've forgotten Greg's word again, but you know what I mean. They're going to split up the inside of the building under the other proposal, and the Lakewood proposal will keep it one big wide open space with those engines intact sitting inside there. Maybe leaves more room for public interpretation of that, history. And then when it comes to the other, I heard that the hotel would be number 2 and the capstone would be number 1. So if we split them into groups, if I was reporting back to city council, I'd say the historic commission preferred the ones that keep the building intact. And of those two would likely prefer the Lakewood approach. And of the, if you did tear it down, of those two, you would prefer the capstone one. Am I accurately paraphrasing?
That would be my vote.
I think that's right. I think you could almost go across your columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Because the hotel was the last one. And the first one was the one that Justin mentioned that probably kept it in its. So I guess if we had to prioritize, right, or giving you some direction, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4 in that order.
Boy, that makes my life easy.
And knowing though that there's, concerns from the residents at Sandpiper about it being, a public, an event space versus residential. I like the fact on both of the reused ones that they include a restaurant, so for me, it's kind of a toss up, but I would agree 1, 2, 3, 4.
I would too.
I think the neighbors of Sandpiper would, their first priority would be to turn it into a park. So it's just nice front lawn for them. And the next priority to be keep it as quiet as possible by making it all residential. So I think that's the prejudice of the immediate neighbors.
That would make sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
This has been very, very helpful and was really exactly what we were looking for. And we got very similar, not similar outcomes. The other boards did have a little different. Planning Commission was very close to what you guys talked about. The Brownfield and EDC were a little different, which you could expect. I guess if they're all looking from their particular filter, that's what we would expect. But we got to come and ask and get that feedback. So I'll just kind of roll it on to one report for City Council. And I would expect we're going to get, I'll be talking to Bob about how he sees this progressing. If we communicate back to the BLP, or if we wait for a communication from the BLP as a next step to see where this is going to turn from here. But, this month, November, was spent coming out to each of these boards and getting some feedback. So thank you for the time.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Bob too, thanks.
Thanks to everyone. Really appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg, for all the work you've
Greg.
done.
Presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Take care.
Thank you, Greg.
See you. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is to the approval of the September 15th regular meeting minutes. We will do individual roll call for this vote. Does anyone have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. And because we are electronic, we need to do the vote one at a time. So Justin?
Aye.
And Karen Casey? Oh, Karen Casey?
Muted.
Oh,
She was on mute earlier, I
yeah,
know.
and she looks like she stepped away. Karen Lowe
Aye.
and Lori
Aye.
and Lisa says yes.
We think we need Karen. Do we need
Yeah.
Karen for a quorum?
Yeah, we
Not
do.
for a quorum, but we should get her vote.
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
we
Could,
need to vote for a quorum. You're right. Sorry, Karen. We
No.
are.
I apologize. My late husband was a clockmaker and he taught the dog to eat when the clock rings certain hours. And so it was 6 o'clock and I had no choice. So sorry.
No problem. We are voting on the approval of the minutes from September 15th.
Oh, yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Did you vote? Okay.
Lisa, I'm sorry. I didn't catch. Can you just confirm who motioned that and seconded it? Sorry.
Okay. Lowe made the motion.
Okay.
Vanderlinde made the second.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the local landmark historical designation discussion. And there has been a lot of conversations and emails and research. We have all done lots of research. And so we wanted to have a discussion about what has happened with the property on Lake Avenue and what we can do moving forward with our commission. The next item after that will be actually regarding the resolution to rescind the motion, but we wanted to have some discussion ahead of that. So I wanted to let you guys know that, and you had received that email as well, that Pat was nice enough to ask the attorney for his opinion on our decision, looking at the ordinance to, if we could have a landmark outside of the historical districts. And the decision, the clarification from the attorney was that the way the ordinance is written, that it must be within a historical district. The only exception to that would be there is a vehicle in place in the ordinance to allow to give a landmark designation to one individual property outside of a historic district. That would be to make it its own historic district, and that works if that particular structure is not related to anything around it. So as a for instance, there's an old farmhouse on Griffin Street that is the Reindeer's farmhouse, and it is all by itself. It's got a really neat barn on it. It's not in a historic district, but it is historically significant. I haven't done a bunch of research on it or anything, but if it turned out to be something that we wanted to do a landmark for, if the customer came to us and applied, we could actually do a landmark designation for that property by making it its own historic district, because it's not related to anything surrounding it. Everything around it is much newer, 60s, 70s, 80s built. That is an old farmhouse, at least 100 years old. In the Lake Avenue situation, it's in a neighborhood of a lot of historically significant homes. And when we realized that we couldn't do the landmark, when Mary and I had that discussion, we saw that there is the ability in the ordinance to recognize it for its historic significance and do a accommodation for that, and thought that that was a good way to go for right now, until such time as it was decided that we wanted to make a change in that neighborhood and make that neighborhood a historic district. So my thought on that was, so we did that recognition for that house, and then the neighbor said, oh, well, my house is significant. I'd like to have that recognition as well. And before you know it, 10 years from now, there's 8 or 10 houses in that neighborhood that fit, that are all have gotten that recognition. And the commission of that time might say, you know, we've got 8 or 10 houses now that are all recognized that have historic significance. Maybe we should make a new historic district of that neighborhood. That would be a vehicle that we would have to have that ammunition to say, this neighborhood fits, because look at all these houses that we've recognized as having a significance. So that's kind of the difference between a historic district and making a single dwelling its own historic district. I don't know if I made myself clear there or not. I don't know if I should maybe point out those things in the ordinance and you can look at them yourself. But it just seemed very, very clear once we understood that it needed to be in a historic district, that we do have some different vehicles that we can use to still recognize properties outside of historic districts. So what I want to do is I'd like to go around the room one at a time and everyone talk about what their thoughts are, what their feelings are. Because we kind of have some different things that we can do. We can either just keep going with what we're doing with rewriting the application and coming up with a more distinct application cover sheet, avenue for an applicant to use to find the information that they need to do the research on the home that they want to apply. And we can just work on that for right now, like we started. We can talk about whether we want to rewrite the ordinance itself to maybe clear up some of the things that maybe are a little interpretive. We can talk about enlarging or making some new historic districts. The downside to a new historic district in the research that I had done on the grant application and survey that was done is that that's a very labor intensive project, because every structure within a boundary that you make of a historic district has to be documented. You have to have a picture of it. You have to have a description of every property, regardless of age. So it can become a labor intensive project. And that may be why they limited the size of those historic districts originally because, you know, it could go on and on and on and on. So with those things to think about, I thought we maybe could go around the room and talk about each one of those things. We don't have to make a decision tonight on what way we want to go, but we need to start talking about some of the different things that we want to look at for maybe moving forward. So does anyone have a preference as to wanting to go first? Otherwise, Lori, would you like to start?
Well, in thinking about it, and I'm a new member, so you know, I have limited knowledge of everything. But that being said, I have, like, my personality at heart is as I'm an organizer. And so to me, coming in, the entire thing seems kind of confusing and complicated. And it almost seems like if it were me, and I don't know what this involves, I would almost start from scratch and looking everything over and seeing if there was a way to simplify it, both for the commission, for the people applying. I'm not sure if that's a matter of looking at the historical districts, or I just feel like it's very confusing, and that maybe we need to just at the very least relook at the ordinances, start from scratch and say, how do we, you know, make this more understandable? That would be my input.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it does. To be able to do that, to rewrite the ordinance, we would have to state our reasons why we think the ordinance needs to be rewritten and present that to City Council. and ask them if we may do that. So we'd have to have some good, strong reasons. The ordinances were written back in the 80s, and I'm sure that there probably are good reasons to update them, that they are maybe not as precise as they should be.
At least maybe tighten them
Mhm.
down to an understandable form, I guess.
Okay, and so I've noted that your choice is to start from the ordinance perspective. Okay. All right, does anyone have a preference to go next? Karen, Karen Lowe, would you like to go next?
Sure. I guess, I've kind of the weeks that have gone by, I've kind of come full circle. I'm not even sure, after doing some of the research and comparing, our ordinance refers back to Act 169 of the Michigan Public Acts. And looking at that versus our ordinance, I think part of the problem is when it was created, Lori, almost so that we can't understand it, because they change definitions from what the state of Michigan had. And I thought, I don't understand this. I'm trying to understand what we're supposed to do. I went out and I looked at what Highland had and what Saugatuck had. And because they're under the same Open Meetings Act, everything is out there. So you just try to understand why is this so difficult to understand? And I've come full circle where I don't think we should mess with it until we really understand it in its entirety. Because I started to come to the conclusion that we're spending a lot of our time on things that aren't inherent in our mission, making us non-compliant. And this is not so much about review. I want to say that because I'm looking at this really, according to the ordinance, we really only have where something must come through this, this committee. It's 11 properties. That's it in all the historic districts. Those are the only ones that must get our approval. Everything else is on an advisory, anything else within a historic district, is kind of just a pure advisory kind of, So I'd like to make sure we're clear and we're complying with that. But when you take a step back, that's like reactive. Reviews and approvals, you shouldn't get to that point if you've educated the community in advance. And so I think I told someone this, Mary, or at least I don't even, as a property owner, I don't really want anybody telling me what I can do with my property. So imagine, my horror when I found out, oh my gosh, like we're going to be doing that, or this is part of it is. But right now it's really for 11 properties that are local landmarks. And that's a defined number. But we are supposed to advise on an awful lot. If by my estimations within our historic districts, there's probably about 1,000 properties. And I don't think we have a complete listing of them that we are supposed to try to help preserve. And so, but from a business perspective, reviews and checkpoints that's the last point in the process. You're supposed to try to fix things upstream. And that's kind of through education. And when I was out looking on the sites, I saw that we have not produced the kind of education around preserving documents that maybe other historic districts have. I'll give you a couple examples. One is like brochures and other things. Trifold, the Saugatuck had a really cool trifold that has some key elements of the Secretary of Interior guidelines, and Grand Rapids had a beautiful PDF document that explained everything about historic districts in layman's terms. It really kind of explained our own ordinance to me, because reading it, it was taken directly, from, but it also included really great pictures of places in their city and how how to restore it or how to preserve it. So it was more like gently educating the public so that those kind of materials were available to them when they went to do things on their house. So it's kind of using the carrot versus a hammer to try to preserve. And I think, by focusing too much on trying to get these local landmarks, we're filling up the ones that we must review, as opposed to going out and trying to get leaning on the education piece of it. So I guess I just thought some of this, I kind of came full circle, and I just feel like we can't undertake rewriting until we understand completely what we are supposed to be doing, and feel like we're spending our time on the right things. And so I feel like the landmark application is probably the last thing we should be spending time on right now, but maybe more thinking about how can we proactively do things that make it easier on the city and the planning office and on us to fulfill what the ordinance says, because the ordinance is drawn from the state of Michigan statute. So they're supposed to be somewhat aligned, even though our council can do anything with the ordinance. I just found it interesting that the Saugatuck in Holland, theirs was much more similar to the state Public Act 169. Ours had been modified in places, and I don't know the reasons why they did it a long time ago, but I thought, well, let's just try to understand what we're supposed to do before we try to, take one little paragraph perhaps out of context and try to correct a situation and instead make it worse,
Well, that's more, maybe I misspoke. I'm not for getting rid of an ordinance just to get rid of an ordinance or re-examine it. I'm more with you trying to figure out what is it. I guess that's the confusion. What is it? What exactly is it we're supposed to be doing, and what's the priority? I would agree with that. I'm not saying let's take away that ordinance. I'm just saying we have to maybe go to at least understanding the process and what it is our mission is. I guess that's where my confusion was.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm going to say, I feel very responsible in that I have been, you're new this year, Lori. I've been on this for a year, and I have never wrestled with I have an MBA, and I had a really hard time reading through this ordinance and understanding clearly what we're supposed to be doing, because there's different things that relate back to, other sections. And it was just hard. It was really hard to go through. So I wanted to just find out, what are we supposed to be spending our time on to make sure we're, fulfilling our duty, and so I guess kind of going back, Lisa, that was just my feedback on all of this, was just like, it's interesting. There's, I just feel like we can't delegate our understanding of the ordinance to the city. It's our responsibility to try to understand it. But I think through understanding it, we can do a better job of communicating some of the things proactively to the community about how to preserve their, again, like leaning more on the carrot than sort of the stick of approval, and understanding that when we make something a local landmark, it kind of puts it into our review cycle. And that's not a bad thing. The cities I looked at, they intentionally took state and national landmarks, and this was not duplicative. They made them local landmarks, so they would have to go through their historic district commission if any changes were made to it. But it was a very intentional process. And so that's why I say, gee, maybe we should stop the focus so much on creating local landmarks. You know, or if we, you know, do according to this our ordinance, if we were looking to protect more properties, we have the ability to do it within historic districts without going to city council. If it's about preserving the property, but I feel like we have to stop and take a step back and just make sure we understand this in detail, and before we say we need to rewrite an ordinance or do something, you know. So it's maybe some baby steps, you know, that start with, Lisa, I think you're gathering a lot of information. I mean, we're still trying to gather some information about how the districts were created and, you know, things like that. I think it's information gathering and trying to understand what actions we can take to simplify. So anyway, that's a long, sorry guys, I took more than my 3 minutes.
I really appreciate it. I like the idea of thinking about what is the Historical Commission's mission? What are we supposed to be doing? You had said probably a year ago, maybe not that long ago, but you had said, Karen, that it surprised you that there were not more walking tours available, more flyers of tours of homes. And I think that's part of the education process of letting the community know what we have and why we have it. So I really like that idea of educating the community more. And then being the piece of the puzzle that if someone wanted to do something to their home, that they would know that they could reach out to this commission and ask, you know, what do you recommend? What it would be the best thing to do to my house to make it look more like it did when it was built? What's available to me to find that out? I think that's a strong thing that we should be doing, and I don't think that's something that we have done much of. So I agree. I think trying to figure out what the commission's actual mission is, what are we supposed to do? What is our job? I think is a good place to start. Absolutely.
And I like your point on that too. It's just, what are the things we have a duty and a responsibility to do based on the ordinance? And then what other things do we want to add to that? You know, and that's kind of what I'm grappling with, and I don't have it all figured out, but I do think that the key is in us diving in a little deeper and understanding, you know, maybe as a entire commission, taking some time to understand what it says and looking at perhaps potential best practices of other historic commissions. What have they done? How are they handling it? How are they streamlining the workload or making it, you know, I think we're going to, you know, learn a lot in that kind of a process, collectively or individually.
Mm-hmm. Great information, absolutely. Karen, Casey?
I support what's been said so far. For me, what I think we need to do some historic research of our own on the ordinance, the creation of the ordinance in the districts itself. And that's a means to an end to understand why the ordinance was put together as it is, because I agree with Lori, it's confusing. There's parts that contradict each other, but then also just the literal lay of the land. And Lisa and I have talked about this. It's like, if you look at the Riverfront District as an example, the map that we have shows that it ends on one side of Harbor, but the physical description just says Harbor Drive. So why was the map then drawn only on the river side of Harbor versus, you know, both sides of Harbor Drive? And that's again to help get our arms around the intent that was done at the time, because I don't think we can move forward unless we understand the reasons things were put into place. So yeah, I don't think we throw out the ordinance and do some wholesale, recreation. But I think that over time, pieces of understanding have gotten lost. The rationale for things have gotten lost. And well, even Lisa had a conversation, I believe, with Pat McGinnis, and I think Karen Loeb pointed this out in an email. Technically, as the map shows now for the riverfront, the diesel plant itself isn't in a historic district. It's on the wrong side of the street. But if you read the descriptions, the physical descriptions, the street markings, it actually ends at the south side and begins at the harbor, at the riverfront. So, but on the maps, it doesn't show that. So it's those kinds of things. So why did these things happen? And maybe that's reading the 778 pages of the survey. I don't know. We're all going to be home again over the winter. Maybe I'll read 778 pages, but just so that I think there has to be a moratorium now on any local landmark designations. I think even the application, I think we just put a hold on that until we understand what we have and why it occurred. And then that'll help us move forward and better understand our mission. I mean, we have a mission statement, but it's broad. And so what do we focus on? And also things like in the ordinance, it says we will review, permit things for X, Y, and Z. But do we really, do I personally really care about whether or not somebody's got, where they put their fence in relation to their pool? Is that our mission? But if in the nuances of the ordinance, it might be if the house falls in the right neighborhood. So a long answer, but I would like to have, I personally anyway, would like to spend some time researching how things came about so that I can better understand why they're stated the way they are in the ordinance. And then what do we need to go? How do we need to move forward from there? With a moratorium again on any local, on the application itself or any designations.
Thank you, Karen. Justin?
I kind of just agree with pretty much everybody at this point. I will say, just to your comment on I believe just addressing the homes, I think you called, like a singular vehicle home or, what you had there. I think that's a good idea, potentially to maybe see, you keep adding homes in a certain area, maybe that does warrant, the next historic district to create at that point. But yeah, that's really just my thought there. So, yeah.
Hey, I was just you just made me think of something. One of the things I did notice is if you go out to Saugatuck or Highland, they have like one historic district or two, one is a historic district of one. It's really a single landmark. And then they have their historic district. And so I'm just throwing this out here, we may find in looking at all of this that we've gone way overboard and we have way too many geographical areas versus, truly choosing. And I only say that when everything's a priority, then nothing is a priority. And so sometimes you got to do the tough work and prioritize, So it's entirely possible we come out of this by saying that they've gone overboard. But I agree with Karen Casey. We got to dig in and find out why did they establish these historic districts as they did, especially since we only have 11 landmarks. 11 landmarks and 7 historic districts is on average not very good.
Correct. Yep. And one of the historic districts is a cemetery. So,
so no houses there. So, or maybe all. I don't. If I may though, real quickly, a flip, we could flip what Karen Lowe just said though, about maybe we have too many districts. Or, and I've thrown this out and I realized it would be a ton of work. But, you know, the city of Grand Haven was founded by Euro-Americans in 1834 and became a city in 1867. We are a small city. You know, what reason would there be not to make the entire city its own historic district and then identify significant landmarks within the city as a district? Now, I'm not saying, you know, and I know the grant said we shall document all properties. I don't know if shall means must or shall means will, depending, you know, on how the grant was written. That would be our research. And whether or not anybody else would want to do that. But I'm just saying, you know, we don't want to negate, we don't want to negate and not honor, respect what came before us. Clearly in the 80s, people had a reason for those districts. I don't think we'd ever want to take them back, but if we're finding that, but boy, that south side should have gone all the way down Lake, or, you know, that kind of thing, then, you know, maybe we look at being more encompassing and then pinpoint areas of recognition with the end. But that's, you know, that's years in the process, but it's just something to think about and another perspective to look at.
Mm-hmm. Well, and remember too, that when these historic districts were decided back in the 80s, that was almost 40 years ago.
That's right.
And houses are only getting older.
That's right.
So historic districts areas could grow just for the fact that, you know, a house that back in the 80s was only 75 years old wasn't as significant as it is now, you know, that it's 40 years older. So
that is if it hasn't changed, you know, in appearance. And a lot has happened since some of those were never officially declared landmarks. Then they never came through our, you know, so who knows what, you know, what happened with them. And I think when you look at national and state, when they go through the process of creating a district, and they have this in the Michigan state statute or whatever, there's a process that you go through and survey, and we've kind of pulled the results of a couple of the historical districts, but they usually try to draw the lines in a way that, you know, 50% or more of those are potential landmarks. And I'm eager to see the East End, because East End is bigger than any of our historic districts. So it should, if we ever find that document, it should list at least half of them. Now for the Southwest and the Northwest, I don't see that we have half of the properties listed. You know, so we're a little shy on the, you know, but on even identify them. I guess the word is significant contributing structures versus non-contributing structures. So even if they're not official landmarks, they're supposed to be historic. And so anyway, there's a lot of work to do, you know, there, but I think this group, we could help simplify and straighten a lot of this out and make it easier for the people coming after us, for sure. And I think that would be time well spent.
Maybe this isn't directly on the topic, but I do say, and you know, talk about rewriting this and exploring different options. Just from my time being on the commission for a couple months, I hate to say it, but it does seem like maybe we kind of all as a group collectively did sort of drop the ball. And not, I think, you know, maybe we were so excited and, you know, gung ho that, hey, we got an application. However, you know, little did we realize that, you know, eventually it was not where the house needed to be. So I think it's kind of a good learning tool for everybody as well. That, you know, maybe even before we even rewrite a bunch of stuff and all that, but we got to focus more too on, you know, the basics, the ground, the homework, you know, the foundation there. So just making sure that things are where they need to be and stuff like that. So I think, you know, it is a good, you know, learning valuable lesson for everybody on the board, you know, and I know it's, you know, one of the most basic things is the home where it needs to be in the district. But I think we just kind of, you know, glossed over that because we were so excited as a group that we had another home that we were able to hopefully and still somehow are able to, you know, give this designation to. So just making sure we do the basics as well. Seems like we gotta do that. So.
I agree. Well, and you know, and I agree. We all learned something there, Justin. We learned a lot. You know, and I still scratch my head about how did that happen that we, you know, we missed that. But my feeling though, and again, this is a little off topic where we are at the moment, but we learned something, but at the beach's expense, and that's what remains very troubling to me.
Yeah,
remains very troubling because the application that was posted on the website that predates all of us. I mean, that predates, and most, well, at least just 4 of us that I know of on the board, does not say has to be. It says, are you in a district? Which one? Doesn't say, oh, you're not, too bad for you, or must be, you know. So we learned something, but the beaches suffered as a result. So
yeah,
and they're gracious about it, don't get me wrong, but somebody else might not have been so gracious. Somebody else might have called the Tribune or whatever. So, you know.
Well, though, and here's the news about it though. As I said, the local designation puts them through this quasi review process, a local landmark. And I think there are people on this committee that didn't know that. And it means that they cannot do things to the exterior without getting a permit or a certificate of approval from us. And so it's actually good news that we caught this, because I think we should give people the option of still applying for state designation, because a state designation does not go through our local ordinance. It's only the ones that we locally designate. So anyway, for me, I agree with you, Justin. We can't delegate our understanding of the ordinances or our mission to anyone. We have to kind of get back to the basics and understand what we can and cannot, you know, do and focus appropriately. I mean, I might say, gee, should we even, maybe do we want to even focus on creating more local landmarks? I don't know. Personally, if that's the way we think we're going to preserve better, you know, preserve structures, or is it through more comprehensive education about preservation and how to do it? I think those are all things we have to get our arms around.
Absolutely. When Karen Casey had brought up about the maps and the lines drawn on the streets and whatnot, I was looking at the descriptions of each district in our ordinance. And it's very interesting when you get down how some of the district areas are more descriptive than others. For instance, the downtown district talks about the center line of the road, yet Southwest does not talk about the center line of the road or which side of the street. So I don't know if these districts were all developed at the same time, or if there was some of them are older than others, and so the people who made them later got more descriptive.
There were different dates on the documents. So some of them started off when they created the ordinance in 1983. Highland Park, I think, was the first, and that's why it comes first. But just as I was going to say this, but I thought it was so unimportant till one of you guys mentioned the map being wrong. Well, the Highland Park map is wrong. It kind of has properties going way up behind, and I think it's just the map. It doesn't agree with the what's written, you know, legally. So it's just stuff that we could clean up and make things so much clearer, you know. So I think this is a blessing in disguise, this whole thing because it will allow us to simplify and get focused. So
Awesome. That is awesome. I think that's great. Do we feel we've had enough discussion on this? Are we ready to move on to item number 6? Or
can I just ask one question?
Yep.
Lisa, what do you want to come out of that? Because we have had a lot of discussion. Are there independent actions that all of us need to take over the next month? Or do we wait to kind of process more? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think we need to process more. I think we over the last month or so have been given so much information that we've either gleaned ourselves and shared with everyone. And I think there's a lot of information here to study. You had provided a lengthy email last night that I'm still studying. The side by side, I think that was very interesting information. And that is what I'd like to see. If anyone has another thought or feeling on that, I would love to hear it. Because I think we're a team, and I think we should work together and do what everyone wants to do, not just what I want to do. I'm just the chair. So I want to hear what everybody wants. Mr. Manetza, what would you like to say?
I appreciate the discussion, and I've been sitting here listening, and you kind of gone around quite a bit. What I've enjoyed is you kind of you've gotten away from the question of what are you expected to do, and more to the question of what do you think is the right thing to do. I think that's really what would inform any changes to the mission or the ordinance. Is what's your perspective of what would be good things to accomplish? What is this commission really? What would really be worth doing from historic conservation perspective by this commission, rather than looking at what did you think council was expecting from you? It's like, okay, I guess what we're expecting. I can't speak for the people who wrote the ordinance. I wasn't around then, but I think what they're expecting was thoughtful input on what was productive to do. And if we went the wrong direction and need to reassess, then nothing wrong with that. I guess we can think about where we go from here, and maybe we keep some of what we have and adjust, and maybe we start over, and maybe we just say, well, what we've got is kind of working, and so let's just be more cautious on how we do things. But I've appreciated the discussion, and I think it's very thoughtful, and I think that I would encourage you to continue to think in terms of, from your perspective, what is the right thing to do. Something that I know that we've all heard from time to time, and I know Karen heard it just the other day, was sometimes there's a legislative solution if things aren't going the way you want. We can always make adjustments, and so that's always a possibility, provided that there's good input as to what we should change, why we should change it. So I didn't really provide any new things for you to hear about, except I appreciate what you're talking about, and I think your thought process is very good. So thank you for that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I had a short conversation with Marcia Peterson earlier, and because I was asking about because I remembered her always making the comment about, I don't want to decide what kind of rain gutter you can put on your house. And so I had asked her if she remembered a time during her tenure of kind of the commission referring to staff on the building permits. Because she said what used to happen years ago is at the beginning of each meeting, they would be handed a list of about 20 properties within historical districts that had put in for building permits to do things to their home. And they wanted the historical commission's opinion about every one of those. And I knew that isn't something that we want to do. We're not interested in knowing what kind of rain gutter a person puts on their house. But I like that, what Karen Lowe had said about we want to focus on those landmark homes only, not every home within the district, just because it's in the district. So I just wanted you to know that I did have that conversation with Marcia, and she was completely on board with what we were saying about not focusing on every property, only focusing on the landmark designated properties.
Well, and I think that's what the ordinance said, I just want to be clear. The ordinance says we have to review and approve just anything done to those 11 properties and really to the structure themselves, the 11 landmarks. But the ordinance also says that we are supposed to be notified, which is probably why she got this list of, and I can't imagine reviewing the permits of for all of these others, which kind of gets into the question of how many historic districts we have and why we have to kind of wrestle with this a little bit. I did look at the process that Saugatuck goes through, and you know, there's pros and cons of all of this, but anything that goes through their committee has to go through a certain form, has to be put together that has pictures and that aligns with some of the guidelines from the Secretary of the Interior, making it very easy for people to review. They actually have a certificate of approval, you know, kind of, process for this, their district. So they don't just get lots of information sent to them. It's organized along in a way that makes it easy for them to look at compliance and give some information. So I think there's just a lot of things, but it has different repercussions. So we have to kind of figure out, that's why I say we have to wrestle with what we're going to do. And if we're not going to do some of these things like review 1,000 other properties, you know, that's probably realistically what we need to go to the council for and change the ordinance rather than just be non-compliant. You know, but again, I just say, I think by looking at and understanding it, and then maybe looking at some other cities in Western Michigan and finding out what they do. The beautiful thing is, as I said, it's all posted because they have publicly they have to have minutes and everything else out there. So it was a great way to kind of peek in there. So as you're doing if you just want to take a look at some things, I would say, just take a look at Saugatuck. It's kind of a good little microcosm, you know, have some interesting things without having to talk to anyone there.
Okay. Well, the nice thing that is already in place as far as not having to make an amendment to an ordinance is there is a thing in place called refer to staff. I was talking to Mike about it, and when he was on the planning commission, they had things that would come across the development office that didn't necessarily come to planning because development already kind of knew what planning was thinking or what their thoughts or what their road was on an item. And so some things don't have to come to planning commission because they refer to staff. So I'm thinking that that's probably what happened years ago with the historical commission, is that somehow things refer to staff and they kind of stayed that way. And we are slowly getting development to include us again. That the last couple of years, the development department has done a much better job of keeping us in the loop on properties that are historically significant that we should be aware of. Just as for instance, when Remax wanted to add a second story onto their building downtown, their building is located in the downtown historic district, and Jennifer came to us and asked our opinion, and we were invited to those meetings to see what they were doing and provide our input. And there were suggestions that the commission made to their contractor and to the RE/MAX owners. And some of them were adapted, and it's awesome that they valued our opinion. The Tribune building, that was another one that they asked, the development department asked our opinion. So it is coming back that they are asking our opinion again, and that's great, and that's what we need. But do we want to know who's putting gutters on their house? No, we don't want to know that. We don't want to see the list of 20 building permits that came through, but we would like to be aware of what's going on to historic district, historically significant buildings within the district. So that's just my input on that. So are we good to just keep devouring the information that we've been getting and bring your suggestions and your information and any research that you've gleaned? You are welcome to email to the entire commission in between meetings. We just can't do a back and forth discussion about them. But as in like Karen did yesterday, she provided information for us to start digesting. And so if you come up with any in your personal individual researches that you want us to start digesting, and then when we have our next meeting, we can discuss it and keep chipping away and moving forward on what it is that our commission wants to do. What do we want to be? What does the city need us for? How can we best serve the city of Grand Haven?
Yeah, maybe we just carve out some time at the next meeting to kind of bring that all together and come up with an action plan. I think that sounds great.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. That was an awesome discussion tonight. Okay, then, item number 6, consideration of the resolution to rescind a motion that was made at the September 17th Historic Conservation District Commission meeting to accept and approve the designation for local landmark designation for 520 Lake Avenue, Leggett House, submitted by Paul and Lisa Veach, based on the home not being located within a historical district, and that being a requirement according to the City of Grand Haven Code of Ordinance, Chapter 19. So, does anyone have any questions on that before we ask for a motion? Does everybody, in our discussions that we've had, the emails that we've gone back and forth on, does everybody understand what that means?
I understand it. I'm not happy about it, but I understand it. And again, only because the error was not the Veaches. That's
it wasn't.
That is, and again, there's that ongoing, debate, so to speak, about, okay, so it was a document posted on the city's website, did not say had to be. The Veaches applied based on that. We, for whatever reason, missed a step. So it just, the term rescind, and I know that what has to be, but it's not comfortable to me because, again, I think it does them a disservice. That is all.
About 1.5 to 2 years ago, we just updated that application under previous administration. And because the application before that was so vague, it was like 2 pages long, I think, is all it was. And it was really vague. And we had a lot of meetings about that application and thought that we had covered everything, and obviously did not. So I think it's a constant work in progress, and we will continue to, in the future, when we pick that up again, we're going to make it better. And
that I know. It's just, at this point in time, it is to take back something, to take back an award is a little.
Yeah. But I think
Okay.
I don't see how we could have done it at this point of understanding that ordinance. I don't think we could have went ahead with it in any way. So that's really what we had to do was rescind it. I mean, or hold it until now and then decide to rescind it. So.
Yeah, and Karen, I think, we might want to just take a step back. There might be a number of ways, as Lisa had suggested, that we remedy the situation, going forward. And it might be that we help them write a state application, or apply to the state for.
Oh, but that's
Right.
something to consider, yeah.
It might be that we wait until we get through this entire process and understand better our mission, and maybe we go with a historic district of one,
No, and I know all that. I just think it's important for it to be
No,
on
I
the
get
record that, an error led to disservice to citizenry. So that is, I'm done. Okay.
I hear you. So do you need a motion?
Yes.
So I'm going to move to rescind the motion.
Okay, second.
I'll second.
Second.
And for a second. And so let's go through roll call then. Karen Casey,
I'm gonna pass on the vote on this one. Can I do that?
no, I think you have to vote. You have to, I don't think you can pass.
Okay. Is Mary still there? Mary knows all
Yeah,
things.
I'm sorry, I had my mute on. You cannot pass. You either, you can vote, you can oppose it, but you have to vote.
Okay.
There's, the only way you would be able to pass on it would be if there was a conflict of interest. And then you would state what that conflict of interest is, and then the board would have to vote that you could in fact not vote. So,
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. No, it does. Okay, no, okay. So
Okay.
I'm gonna vote yes because we have to, but very reluctantly so.
Okay,
There's my vote.
okay. Justin,
Vote yes.
Vanderlinde,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
and Dora, yes. So vote passed. So now item number 7, Tri-City Museum Advisory Member Update, report by Aaron Polarsky. Are you still there, Aaron?
I'm still here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Sorry, I've been pretty quiet, but I've been taking it all in, and
I appreciate that.
it's a lot of information.
Yes, it is.
So, update from the museum. Well, we're still open, so that's good. With a bunch of the COVID restrictions now, we're still open. However, with schools going online, I've hit yet again another hiccup with programming. So my department's been struggling a little bit again. But inside the museum, we have our Highland Park exhibit up. I know you guys looked at it briefly before, but that's still up and running. We have 3 things going on for the month of December. We are hosting our Deck the Halls event, which is local nonprofits can decorate a tree and people will pay to vote for their favorite tree. And all the nonprofits will be able to keep their voting, the money that they've received from the votes. But the first place will get an additional $250. So it's a fundraiser for us as well as the local nonprofits. We also have a gingerbread house contest we're hosting here. So far we have 0 signups, but if you know anyone that's interested in signing up to make a gingerbread house, and they'll be displayed here. They're not going to be built here. So it's all social distance, nothing really here. It's just people can walk through and look at stuff. Then we have 200 take and make goodie bags for kids to take with little crafts and knickknacks that they can keep. So we're doing a lot in-house, still keeping relevant with the community, but knowing that COVID's really hurting us right now. And we are at half capacity with staff. A lot of staff members are working from home now, and it's not because of illness or anything. It's just for safety reasons. So we are working at a half capacity right now. So it's been a struggle. So if you guys reach out to me with emails and it takes me a little longer to respond, I do apologize. Just know that I am receiving them, and I am still willing to help with any information. And I am forwarding information to Jared Yax, our collections curator, to help out with some of this stuff.
Erin, what are the hours of the museum, and how do you go about, like if I wanted to stop by and look at the Highland Park exhibit more in detail?
So you don't have to schedule anything. We are open 9 to 5, Tuesdays through Fridays, and then Saturday and Sundays from noon until 5. Completely free. We are only allowing 30 people in the building at once. But this is our slow season, so we haven't really reached that all together at one time. So feel free to come in during those hours.
Good.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Because we did take a look at them before our meeting last month, and there's so much information to read. I knew I wanted to come back and when I had more time and really delve into it.
The research on that was done really well. And Karen Lowe, thank you so much for writing that book. I learned a lot from reading that book. So I had to write the River Winds. I don't know if you are familiar with our River Winds.
Yeah.
I wrote that centerfold article, and your book really helped with a lot of the research. So thank you so much for that.
Well, thanks for writing that. I picked it up the last time I brought someone over to the museum for a tour, and I saw your brochure. I loved it. It was really nicely done.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Erin.
Thanks, Erin.
John Martin is not here tonight to give us any Loudoun library report. But I do understand that the library itself is closed, but you can still order books for pickup, and so that's still good because I have a book that I need to return. So, so item number 9, other business not on the agenda. Anything that members would like to address that we maybe didn't discuss. I'm just going to start out by saying we have received an application. I did email it to everyone from Eric By. I shouldn't say we received an application, the city did, and they were gracious enough to share it with us. The decision, the choices are decided by the mayor, but I did reach out to him and let him know that I do know this young man. He has been part of the NORA program since he was a child. And he is probably, he's probably in his low 30s, maybe.
He's a couple years older than I am. I know
Is he?
that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he was a few years ahead of me. Yep.
Okay. And he coaches girls lacrosse at the high school. He is a history teacher at the high school. And he also, he's done a lot of, back in the day when we had inline hockey, he coached inline hockey for us. But he's very conscientious. He's very courteous and polite and all that good stuff that we like to see all our young people strive to as they become adults. But I think because he, having this, being a history teacher and having a passion for the local history now, he lives in my neighborhood. I didn't realize that until I saw his address on his application. So that was exciting. I walked by his house the other day and go, oh yeah, I know where that house is. So I don't know. I thought it would be great to have another young person on our committee. Not that we're ancient or anything, but some young blood and another guy on our committee. I think that would be a good plus as well.
Full
So,
diversity.
yeah, absolutely. We got the diversity and some great input from everybody. So just wanted you to know my opinion on him, but
I think that it had been mentioned, but when do we officially find out if he'll be a board member, Mary?
yeah, I don't know. I don't know when Mr. Manetza decides that. But I'm sure he's working on it. Mr. Manetza, are you still with us? He's still working on it.
I'll put
Yay.
that in the notes. Thumbs up emoji. I'll put that in our minutes.
So does anyone else have anything that they'd like to bring to the commission's attention? Talk about?
You know what? I have a depot committee update, but I think it really can wait until we've had 2 meetings.
Yes, I'm sorry, we didn't.
Since the last time, but I don't have any renderings, even though we have gotten some feedback. Like I said, we had 2 meetings since our last meeting. But I think it can all wait till next time and we'll have an official update for you.
Okay.
Okay.
They were productive meetings. Things are happening, huh?
Things are, in fact, we're at a point where I think we're close enough in agreement as a committee to start to go out and test for the philanthropic kind of funding, because as I mentioned, I think the last time, it's going to cost some money to get this building in shape, So hopefully we'll be able to find that in these COVID times.
Well, that's great news. Thank you for sharing that, because I forgot to note it after you reminded me of that.
Okay.
So thank you. I'm glad that we added it to the other business. That's good. Anybody else?
Nothing here.
I know we're not doing a public comment portion again at the end of our meeting, but did you get any comments through Facebook or anything that we need to hear about?
Let me double check, Lisa. I do not believe so. I have checked it recently.
The only one I saw was an early one when you were getting your presentation from Greg Holcomb. Somebody chimed in and gave a listing of their votes.
Okay.
But they didn't give their address, so typically we don't read those during public comment. We have a kind of a philosophy that if people want to comment, they can give their name and address, because we all know who you all are. So if somebody wants to address you, we like to ask them, well, who are you, if you'd like to talk to us. So did you get any with addresses, Mary? You're muted. Well, she's working on that. When you guys sign off tonight, I saw a meme today that the new salute at the end of every Zoom meeting in the world, what does everybody do?
They wave.
Yeah, you'll see. At the end of every one, everybody in the room does this. So we've got a
Different.
Oh, we don't do this? Like, what's the queen?
Okay, that'll be okay.
I usually do the peace.
Yeah, go
ahead.
Yes, yeah.
There were no more comments.
I heard a really neat, kind of a neat little saying from a friend of mine this morning when she emailed me. She said, the newest thing I've heard is stay positive, be negative.
There you go. Ain't that the truth?
Okay.
I guess if that's it, I guess we will adjourn at 7:11.
Perfect.